Let's talk about if you should quit learning a language or not. My name is Azrin. I run a business called the Calgary Language Nerds. We teach a whole bunch of different languages. If you'd like to work with myself or one of the instructors on my team, please go to the link in the description box of today's episode, and I'd be more than happy to chat with you further. What is a good reason to give up on learning a language? I think this probably gets highly personal. I'll give you an example. I was learning Korean about 1 or 2 years ago, and I lasted about 3 weeks. I did 2 or 3 weeks of intensive studies, and then I stopped. And the reason I stopped was because I was very frustrated by the pronunciation, and it wasn't a very big priority in my life compared to other things. So I started it, got a taste of the language, and quit for my own personal reasons. I did something very similar for Japanese. I started learning Japanese. I spent about 3 weeks, maybe a month, learning the language, and then I quit because I got what I wanted from learning the language. I was testing some different language learning methods. I learned what I wanted to learn from them, and then I, quote unquote, quit. I'll give a non-language example. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, and I did them for about a month. I sprained a ligament. It took about 2 months approximately for it to heal properly, and I ended up quitting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I thought, man, I got hurt so fast and so easily, I don't want to get hurt again. And that was the reason that I had for quitting. But I heard someone named Alex Hormozi say the following. He said there's not really such thing as quitting. You basically get pivoting. What did he call it? Push or pivot. Push means you push through whatever difficulty you're facing. Pivot means you change directions. And his general rule of thumb is that when you don't pivot unless you gain new data. So unless you gain new information that makes you think, oh, I didn't know this 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago. Now that I have this new information, I'm going to make a different decision. If you're using that as a rule, maybe you're not really quitting, maybe you're just changing direction because you gain new information you didn't have 48 hours ago. 48 hours ago when you decided, I'm going to do this, and now it's 48 hours later, you've got new information, and then you change your mind. Well, maybe you just changed your mind because you have new information, right? Go back to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu example. I realized that I probably am not in the right, this might be wrong, by the way, maybe this isn't what happened, but the way I was thinking of it is I wasn't in good enough shape to be doing it in such a way where I can keep myself safe, I suppose. So now, literally started this last week, I see a personal trainer and I'm trying to get stronger, more nimble, more agile. And I would like to go back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the future. So it's a pivot. I'll say one more topic on the topic of quitting here. I heard a really good piece. I heard a really nice mental framework from Jordan Peterson, which I like quite a bit. And the framework is this: if you're going to quit something because you want to quit it or do something different, follow this rule. If you're going to quit, the next thing you move on to from what you quit has to be equally difficult or harder than the thing you quit. That keeps you in check. So if you're going to quit a language, for example, you go, man, this German is really too hard for me. This Arabic is just too difficult. I'm having a really hard time doing, 3 lessons a week or whatever you're doing, right? I'm having a very hard time. I don't want to study Arabic. Well, whatever you replace that with, you have to feel subjectively, if you're honest with yourself, that it's just as difficult as what you were doing or more difficult. And that'll keep you in check. The last thing I'll say on this topic, looks like I have a lot to say on this topic. The last thing I'll say on this topic is sometimes if you feel like quitting, a better approach might be to take a few steps back and reduce the expectation that you have on yourself. I learned this from when I worked in a window cleaning franchise. I used to run a window cleaning business. And I remember this one time I'd set a goal to run a $150,000 a year business. Not profit, just top line revenue. And at that time, I can't remember how much window cleaning I'd sold. I don't remember. It was probably something like $20,000, something like that. And I remember my general manager, my GM, was like, Azrin, look, if you get to $150,000, that's great, but you are nowhere near that number. You're not anywhere near. It is highly unlikely. And you're putting a ton of pressure on yourself by aiming at this goal that is incredibly way beyond where you are now. And so you're way better off scaling back the goal and actually setting something smaller with more realistic, quote unquote, expectations, and then building back up, especially if that big expectation you've set in your mind is crushing you, because the bigger the expectation, the heavier it is and the more it squishes you. So if you make it lighter and then build it back up, that also might be something, an alternative rather, to quitting altogether. So hopefully there's something there that you find helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate your attention. If you have any questions, comments, whatever it is, feel free to let me know in the comments of this episode, or go to the link in the description box of today's episode, and you're welcome to contact me from there and we can chat further. Have a great rest of your day and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.